Welcome back. In the last episode, we went from this to this. We have machines, storage, basic ore processing, free cobblestone, and a passive biodiesel setup for create stress units. Today's episode, we venture off into the unknown, unlocking applied energistics and more. And to get applied energistics, we need to make it to medium voltage, which requires the EBF. So let's speed through that process, and I'll see you back when we have it. So now that we have the EBF built, we need to get some aluminium. But without a huge ore processing line, how the hell do we turn these sapphires into aluminium dust? Well, the bad way, of course. First, we right-click the cauldron to get purified ore, smash it all with a hammer, and of course break the hammer, and then right-click on the cauldron again to get the sapphire dust, and then we send it through the electrolyzer to get our pure aluminium dust. And out of our initial round of smelting, we have almost 2 stacks of aluminium ingots. And as is tradition when going through to the next tier of energy, let's make a stack of motors. So just a quick reminder, this is what our base looked like at the end of episode 1. And this is what it looks like now. The first circle is going to be the central hub for our applied energistics network. The stairs going down underneath are going to be going to the clean room. And the lower platform is going to be our wiring tunnel. The top layer is where we're going to have several bays for each different process. Processes such as our autocrafting system, our ore generation and ore processing system, as well as all of our other chemical processes. But the first thing we need to set up is how we're going to actually get some power there, because I want to set up sulfuric acid and I want to set up ethylene production. So I'm standing here in our lovely new bay structure on the southern extension, where I'm just going to tell you about how we're going to power it, because I've done a bit of testing and I think this is going to be the way to go for now. But as with all things Gregtech, you can do it however you want. So I think let's start at the very basics. What can we produce for free? And what we can produce for free is cobblestone. You can do a few things with cobblestone, and one of the things you can do is throw it through the forge hammer to make gravel. Gravel unfortunately doesn't have any useful sifting products that we can use for power generation. However, we can break it down to sand. Now, sand has two processes that we could take advantage of. We could use coal in a Stirling dynamo. It's a 10% chance, and it requires a flint mesh. We can't automate this, unfortunately, until high voltage. But there is a sneaky way using another type of dynamo that uses diamonds for power. We can use a kinetic sieve to guarantee diamond drops, a whole stack of them in 90 seconds. Diamonds give 500,000 RF, which is about, I think it's 125,000 EU, and we can increase its production rate using more lapidary dynamos. But this gives us a free way of making power out of diamonds, which goes back to sand, back to gravel, back to cobblestone. So we just need to set up the kinetic sieve, a way to power it, 2 forge hammers, and an igneous extruder. So for you, this is going to be a blink. For me, this is probably another 2 hours of crafting. And here we are, the power plant Mark 1. So to start with, we have 2 igneous extruders just making cobblestone, sent into a forge hammer for gravel, into another forge hammer for sand, into a drawer for buffering, and then into the input bus. As we discovered last time, 256 sand gets us 64 diamonds guaranteed every 90 seconds. We're going to buffer everything else because they're semi-useful. Amethyst is going to be used for biodiesel. Emeralds will be used much later. Quartz is somewhat useful. And lapis we can macerate, centrifuge, and electrolyze to get an infinite supply of chlorine. And then diamonds, which will be our main source of power for the meantime. We send diamonds into the lapidary dynamo, buffer the power in the flux cell, and then send the power to the forge hammers to then create the sand for the sieve. And the first item to get checked off is our sulfuric acid. So first, oxygen and sulfur on circuit 2 makes sulfur dioxide. Send that into the next chemical reactor with more oxygen. Now we have sulfur trioxide. One more chemical reactor, we add water, and there we are, sulfuric acid. And the next step in progression is sodium bisulfate, which is just sulfuric acid and 2 salt dust on circuit 1. And there's our sodium bisulfate, and then we just electrolyze the sodium bisulfate, and we get sodium persulfate and hydrogen gas. And so now we've got our sodium persulfate, we need to continue on our circuit grind here. So let's mix some gallium and some arsenic for some gallium arsenide. And after gallium arsenide comes the diode. The diode is small piles, fine annealed copper, and liquid glass, which is going to get us 2 diodes per craft. Not amazing, but it's a start. And in the assembly machine, we'll start to make the diodes. And now we have our diodes. And while we're here, we'll make the phenolic circuit board, which is wood pulp, glue, and circuit 1 in the assembler. There we are. And then to make the printed circuit boards, we just put silver foil, our sodium persulfate, and some phenolic circuit boards together in a chemical reactor. And we've got our printed circuit board. And now we have enough to make the first few MV circuits. And with our newly acquired medium voltage circuits, we can get the circuit assembler, the best single block in the early game. So let's turn our attention back to the wall of production. As I said last time, I'm looking to get polyethylene. That's going to really open up the game as our first plastic. And now behind me here is a free way of getting polyethylene with very minimal inputs. The first step is compressing potatoes into plant bowls. This takes 15 seconds to make 1 plant bowl. And then we need to macerate 2 plant balls down to get biochaff. Biochaff into the brewer makes biomass. Biomass gets sent to the distillery. This needs to be medium voltage. This is why we couldn't do this in low voltage. On circuit 1, to make ethanol. Now we have ethanol, and the next step is medium voltage chemical reactor with sulfuric acid to make ethylene. So we'll set this to auto output into the chemical reactor. We'll grab a bucket of sulfuric acid. And we'll react those two together, 60 seconds. This does take a very long time, but for now, it's the best we have. And now we have a bucket of ethylene and a bucket of diluted sulfuric acid. We can just send the diluted sulfuric acid through the distillery on circuit 1, and we can reclaim 40 millibuckets of our sulfuric acid per 60 ml of diluted acid. And then our bucket of ethylene goes in a chemical reactor with oxygen, and we'll make polyethylene. Ethylene goes into a chemical reactor with oxygen on circuit 1, and we get our first plastic, polyethylene. It's time to work on applied energistics. And as of recording this, I've got enough votes in the poll to know exactly what you guys want, so I'm going to be playing this run without channels. So here we are. This is the command to basically disable channels. So first things first is the energy acceptor. This requires star metal, which is a fluix crystal, and 2 steel. And the fluix crystals require nether quartz, charged certus quartz, redstone, and water. Charged certus quartz just requires the crystals to be polarized. And we have those, so let's polarize. And of course, this is why it's important to actually read the recipes. This is a medium voltage mixer. I think we could still do this in regular water, so let's just give that a go. Looks like it worked. And there we go. The medium voltage mixer debacle there should have been a tip off, but we need a medium voltage alloy smelter as well. But we are officially out of circuits, so I guess it's time to craft some more. So thanks to our new circuit assembler, we've actually unlocked a cheaper recipe than this terrible recipe. Even though we made a full stack before, we're going to be able to make 2 stacks with almost half the resources here. And so here we are, we'll start crafting. Can't fit everything in yet, but that's okay. And there we are, 2 circuits per board, 1 to resistor. It's great, it's fantastic, we love it. The next medium voltage circuit recipe only takes 2 LV tiers compared to the 3 that are used in this recipe here. And we have our circuits crafted. We left a stack of LV and we have 32 MV circuits. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our energy converter. We're going to use an 8 amp converter, even though the dynamo can only provide, I think it's 2 amps. Then we need the alloy smelter, an extractor, an electrolyzer, and we already had an autoclave. And we'll make the assembling machine while we're at it. And we have our power setup. Again, we're using our lapidary dynamos into converters. Now we've got the beginnings of our medium voltage line. And the first thing we want is star metal. Star metal is just an alloy of fluix crystals and steel. I guess it's called star steel. And while we have our medium voltage electrolyzer up, let's start getting some chrome. We have a bunch of ruby dust that we need to electrolyze. It also gets us some aluminium dust, which is very useful. Now we have 24 star metal, 21 chrome, and 42 more aluminium. Aluminium we're just going to send straight through the blast furnace again. Chrome goes in storage for later. Star metal goes through the bender to make the star metal plates that we need. Now we can start mixing up fluix crystals the right way in the MV mixer. We'll then make the energy cell. We don't have access to the silicon press yet because we have no silicon, but what we'll do is we'll just start getting the calculation press and the others. Have our inscriber logic press. Now we have the engineering press, which is used for the diamond presses. And now we have our calculation press. One of the best parts about the MV extractor is that you can now extract steel and aluminium and most of the other materials and send them through a casting mold for the gears, so we can just cheapen our gear crafting. Small gears usually take 2 ingots and now they only take 1. One of the best parts about MV is clay dust electrolysis, getting us sodium, lithium, aluminium, and silicon. Given we can make clay dust for absolutely free using a large wooden barrel and a cobble works, this is free aluminium and silicon. So all we need are 3 forge hammers, an igneous extruder, an MV electrolyzer. First step is to use the igneous extruder to make cobblestone. Then we triple forge hammer the cobblestone into dust. So after the forge hammers, it goes into a large barrel that is supplied by water to turn it into clay. It's then sent round the back to a macerator to make 4 clay dust. And then it's sent into the electrolyzer, which will send it into the storage controller and then will output into these drawers. And now we'll link all the drawers. And we're going to lock all the drawers. So now we have aluminium, silicon, lithium, and sodium on passive. And we can take our 1 silicon dust and put it through the forming press to get the final inscriber. And this is the start of our applied energistics network. Right now we have a lapidary dynamo. We're using our brand new MV upgrade kits, which as you can see, boost the production up to 3200 RF per tick, which is fantastic. And this goes into our energy acceptor and then into the energy cell. So now theoretically, we have an applied energistics network. It's missing drives and terminals and any sort of functionality other than existing, but we have one nonetheless. So pretty much the key component in all applied energistics components is the printed silicon, which requires Gregtech silicon plates, which requires a silicon ingot, which we need to first make a hot silicon ingot and then cool it down in the chemical bath. But silicon ingots actually require kanthal coils, so our first step in making the silicon is to make kanthal. We need 2 stacks of ingots, so we can put 42 of aluminium, iron, and chromium dust through our advanced mixer on circuit 1, and we'll get 3 kanthal per craft. And kanthal we cook in the blast furnace for 45 seconds to make a hot kanthal ingot, and we need to cool it down the same way in the chemical bath. This is a really yucky way of doing things, but for now it's the only way we have access to. We actually need extreme voltage circuits to craft the vacuum freezer, and that's going to require the plastic circuit boards. Well, it turns out kanthal actually needs to be smelted at high voltage, so we need to make medium voltage energy hatches now. So after many minutes of waiting, we finally have some ULPIC chips, which, because we don't have lubricant production yet, these take almost 68 seconds to cut down. And this is also a 45-second recipe. So lots of waiting, but now we can make some MV energy hatches. So we have moved and upgraded our blast furnace to high voltage, which is powered by 4 amps of medium voltage. And now we're cooking kanthal in the same time it took us to cook aluminium. And so now we just wait an hour and a half for all of our kanthal to cook. Yay.
2 hours later.
We finally have our full kanthal coils now. Let's replace these coils and get some silicon. So we finally managed to get ourselves 64 silicon plates, and we can finally put them through the inscriber press and start finishing applied energistics. Or at least finishing the setup for now. So now that we've printed the silicon, let's alloy smelt all of these down and continue our quest to automate the base. So we start with the logic circuits. We just alloy smelt the silicon and the raw circuit. 10 seconds in the alloy smelter. And we get our logic processor now. And we're going to do this for the engineering and the calculation as well. And I'll meet you back here when it's time to set up applied energistics. So let's go through our basic crafting. So we want a crafting terminal. And we actually need to make 2 of these because we're going to make a pattern encoding terminal as well. So we've got our main terminals. Now we want to get 2 disk drives. No other purpose than symmetry. I just like symmetry. And we'll make 4 crafting units, I think. So we can multi-thread. We'll make 2 coprocessors. And then we'll make 2 1K crafting storages. I'll make 4 interfaces. These interfaces are actually relatively expensive in the meantime while we try and grapple with making Flixstar, Certus Quartz and these logic processors. And let's make a few 1K storage drives. I'll make 7. It's an awful number. And we'll turn them into components. So we'll have our drives here. We'll just fill the left side for now. Brilliant. So we've connected it to the energy acceptor, or sorry, the energy cell, and our device is online. So now all we need to do is plug in our crafting components and our terminals, and we should actually be good to go. So we've got our terminals placed down. We're going to hide them, don't worry. I definitely prefer the full height terminals. Now let's find a good spot for our crafting processes. So it turns out to actually craft things, you need to make the pattern provider rather than the interface. That's just my 1.12 brain kicking in, I guess. So the difference between a good modded player and a bad modded player is how quickly they go for auto crafting. And there are so many things that I want to do right now. The blank pattern, unfortunately, we need to get more of these before we can even consider filling out the entire auto crafting register. But for now, I think we need to automate our basic resources. So let's start with the medium voltage machine hull. That's so handy. I didn't actually realize that we were going to be able to put fluids directly in already. That's quite helpful once we get some storage buses and can start moving our fluids around, but we'll have that because that'll go into our assembler. We'll also use this. This is a circuit 8 recipe. Okay, so I guess we have to do this the bad way. There we are, easy. And then let's tell it how to make steel plates. So we have our bender. It's the wrong steel. I'm not sure why this is always going to the nuclear craft steel, but at least we can just drag it in there. Okay, we need to be able to make tin wire. Again, the nuclear craft version. So we'll put tin ingot in there. and then rubber, and then we have automatic coating. So theoretically, if we had all these in our applied energistics system, we would be able to request a low voltage machine hull. So let's set these up. In the bender, we want to place our pattern for steel plates. In the wire mill, we will place our tin wire. And in the assembler, we'll place our coating recipe, our machine casing recipe, and then the machine hull. There we are. And now the pattern providers are all connected. So we should see the steel plates that we just made get returned into the system. And there they are. So theoretically, if we had everything, missing tin ingots, the rubber, and the polyethylene, we could actually request our low voltage machine hull. That's probably the last time I'm going to show making all of the patterns. It's just tedium. But now you know how we do it, so when you see me being able to request these huge crafts like I did in the last series, that's exactly how. You have a pattern provider, and you have a machine. So one of the best parts about applied energistics is the storage buses, and I'm going to show you exactly why these are so fantastic. So for something like our clay electrolysis, I don't want to be importing thousands of dust into the actual drives, given they have such limited space. That's where the storage bus comes in. On the back of the controller, I can place a storage bus, partition the storage, and you can see that this storage bus, once we connect it, we'll be able to read all of these items in the network. This will be extract only because it's a passive system, and now all we have to do is connect it. And now, once we look in the terminal, we actually can see that we have sodium, silicon, aluminium, and lithium available in the terminal, but they're not stored in the drives. So we could take these out. We could take a stack of lithium, and when we put it back in, it'll go into the drives. So I might just go put this back in the drawers, but this is how we're going to have all of our big passive processes, things that will constantly generate resources. We are going to use them as storage buses so that we don't clog up our drives. And I think it's about that time to wrap up today's episode. We've made a lot of progress today, including designing an entire new base, creating the pathways underneath that base for wiring and setting up applied energistics, as well as setting up sulfuric acid, polyethylene, clay electrolysis, and a massive power plant. And with that, I want to thank you all for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe so you can tune in for next episode. See you next time. Bye bye.